Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to the Cool Kids Lunch Table Podcast with PJ and Mike. Now find yourself a seat at their table.
Hey kids, I'm Mike,
I'm PJ.
and today we'll be starting a new ongoing series entitled Old Movies, New Reviews. So PJ and I, in this series, we're going to pick an old film pre-2000. Okay, so that's so past. Oh, it's going to be clocking over 25 years ago, and we're just going to review it. These are films maybe we just saw recently, maybe we've seen it dozens of times. We want to talk about it, see if it still holds up. I don't know PJ's pick; he doesn't know mine. So yeah, folks, there's going to be spoilers, and like I said, the criteria is it's pre-2000, so before the new millennium, and we don't know if it's going to be good or bad, especially if it's one you just seen. That might be old. So I'm excited to kick things off. So, folks, just to give you some background. So for me, I picked a Ridley Scott film because he's one of my favorite directors. The guy who did Alien and Blade Runner, and he's coming out with the new Gladiator, Gladiator 2. I'm not really excited about Gladiator 2. I'm worried about Gladiator 2. But I wanted to see PJ some of his earlier films. Some of the biggest films I've never seen. I've never seen Thelma and Louise, which is one I'm going to watch one day. But that's not the one I've seen, PJ. Instead, I saw his first film from 1977. It's called The Duellists. So I want to talk about that. So
I have never seen that film.
Yep. I never saw it. I saw it maybe a month and a half ago.
Okay.
So yeah, let me just tell you a little bit more about it. So this is Ridley Scott's first film. Okay, it's a historical drama. Okay, it takes place in France during the Napoleonic Wars. So as you're going to see, obviously Ridley Scott, he just came out with Napoleon, I think last year or this year with Joaquin Phoenix. Basically, I'll get more into the story, but just to give you the gist, it's about a series of duels between two rival officers, and it stars Harvey Keitel, that's Mr. White from Reservoir Dogs, and then it
And Winston
stars.
Wolfe.
Yes, exactly.
That's my favorite role of his is the Wolf.
Oh yeah. And the other guy, his other rival, I guess you could say the hero of the film is Keith Carradine. This is the, believe the half brother of David Carradine, Bill from Kill Bill, or the Kung Fu: The Legend Continues. This is his brother. So they're in it. And this movie's based off a short story called The Duel. So yeah, folks, I wanted to see this film because it was his first film, and I've always seen people say like, "Oh, it has some of the best sword fighting scenes ever," And back in the day when it came out for the Cannes Film Festival, it won for best debut film, and it got widespread acclaim from critics for Ridley Scott's direction and visuals, historical authenticity, and the fight choreography by master swordsman William Hobbs, and is considered one of the most accurate depictions of dueling in a film. So, yeah, I was excited to watch this film. So I'm just going to talk about PJ, just the plot for everybody. Okay, I'm gonna leave the ending. Not gonna spoil that, but I'll just tell you what it's about. So basically, it's about these two guys. So, it's the hero is his name is Dubo, and that's Keith Carradine. So I might just call him from now on just Keith Carradine to make life easy. And it's Ferro, I think I pronounced it correctly. Like I said, these are French. That's Harvey Keitel. So basically, how the movie starts is Harvey Keitel loves to duel, and when we say dueling, folks, this is with swords. Okay, there are guns at this point, and in history. But when someone goes, "I challenge you for a duel," so what they did back in the day, folks, is when we think of duels, we think it's actually like a duel to the death. Actually, it wasn't really about that. It was really more calling somebody out. Like, I challenge you to the flagpole, and basically we're like, whoever drew's first blood, that's how you know who won the fight. So it was never really about killing someone. Some people died, I guess, by accident. Um, so yes, the movie's about that's kind of the setup. So anyway, the movie starts out with Harvey Keitel, and he starts off with a duel, and he stabs this guy pretty bad. Not Keith Carradine, some rando. So what happens is Keith Carradine, they're both soldiers, so like almost like police officers, soldiers type. So Keith goes back to he gets called on by his superior and says like, look, you got to find Harvey Keitel. You got to and tell him he's got to calm down. He's having too many duels. He's killing too many people by accident. And the person that he had a last duel with, who he maimed severely, was like the mayor's son. So everyone's it's like just not a good look. So you need to go find him, tell him to lay low. He's on house arrest for the next 6 months, and he can't be doing that. So Keith Carradine's like, kind of doing like, he's like a delivery boy, you know what I mean? A messenger boy. So that's all. It's like, so he finds Harvey Keitel. He's like, look, man, I'm under orders. You can't be dueling. You're doing stupid shit. You gotta lay low for you gotta lay low for 6 months. You gotta, you can't be doing this stuff. So Harvey Keitel flips out and says, how dare you tell me that I can't duel? So he challenges him and he's like, sir, I'm just doing my job. I'm not gonna fight you. Long story short, he ends up fighting him, and he beats Harvey Keitel. He just gets the upper hand, and he basically at this point he like hurts his reputation. Like, oh man, you got owned by Keith
Right.
Carradine, son. So what happens throughout the rest of the film, and Keith Carradine, he's like a very decorated officer. He's fought in many battles. He's very respected, and he's not a nut. Like he doesn't love war. He doesn't love killing or fighting. That's his job. Harvey Keitel's character is a guy who loves war. He loves to kill. He loves the duel. So what happens is every time he runs into Harvey Keitel, he wants to have a duel with him. And he's like, like, dude, we have other things. It's really not that big a deal. Anyway, this rivalry takes now, like, and it's basically the film is 20 years of these two always going at it. So, like, it could be years, and all of a sudden he runs into him at a bar, and he's like,
Time for a duel.
yeah, Power, let me get my sword. So there's really a sense of dread every time he sees him, and he's just like, when is this guy gonna give it up? And kind of like today's culture, which isn't really different. It's like you don't want to look like a wimp or a pussy. You want to,
Right.
like, because like in the movie, Keith Carradine has like a girlfriend. She's like, why do you have to fight him? Why do you don't have to do that? You guys are beating the crap at each other. Like, what's the point? He's like, I can't do it. If I do that, I'm gonna look like a wimp in front of my other soldiers. Now he's like moved up in the ranks as a soldier, like a general, that kind of thing. He's like, I can't be doing that. So anyway, throughout the film, they're kicking each other's ass, and at the end, as I said, just 20 years this duel's going on, 15, 20 years, and Keith Carradine tells Harvey Keitel, because he gets called out one last time, and he goes, "All right, this time we're doing guns. That's it. This is the final duel." Meaning,
It's over after this.
yeah, that's it. So no more swords. We're
Okay.
we're going to guns. And I'm not gonna spoil what happens, but it's a very cool ending. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's about like maybe a little less than 2 hours, maybe like an hour and 50 minutes. Um, I'll kind of just tell you about some of the pros and cons. The pros, the fight scenes are very cool. This is like, I guess the best way to kind of explain it is like the early like Star Wars, like with like Luke Skywalker and where they're kind of just it's not all fancy and schmancy what they do now. It's like feels very choreographed. This feels like just raw. Like these guys are just like when they're holding their swords out, you're like, you know, one strike could be it. So
Right.
really feel the intensity. And they have about 4 or 5 duels before the last gun battle. It's really the end's really more of a cat and mouse game with the guns. But anyway, the sword fights are great. I really like the costumes. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but it just feels it. They don't make movies like this anymore. I know they just came out with Ridley Scott's Napoleon, and but it's really that these time period films are becoming less and less, and
Yeah.
which is a shame because sometimes they can not war movies. I'm talking about these kind of time periods because people I think automatically equate them with being boring. I guess movies. I mean, shows like what's it called? Game of Thrones has that kind of medieval feel, but this has so much fantasy and you know.
You know what I think's happening, and I mean maybe not necessarily for this time period, but just in
Mhm,
general with period pieces,
mhm.
these time periods feel further away from us now,
Yes.
because like I mean obviously these things take place forever and a day ago, so it's not like it's right around the block.
Hmm.
But the more we progress, like we're in 2025 in 2 months,
Yep.
right? All of a sudden, when you start looking at like 1980 and 1990, those are period films now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when you
Ew.
start looking at so when you start looking at movies from like even further back,
Yeah.
it just feels so like unapproachable because unless you're going all the way back and you're doing like a
Hmm.
gladiator or a
Yeah.
real something that feels historic, right?
Hmm.
Otherwise it just feels like I can't care about this time period. It's so far like you either
Yes.
have to go all the way back and you're in like some like something no one could have ever been in,
Yep.
right? Or you have to be, for a period piece, something that to us feels modern.
Yep.
And I think that's what's ruining some of these period piece films, because I just have a hard time, like, when I watch something from the 80s being considered a period piece, but it is.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, man, for sure. And I guess that's one of the things I like about the film is I got lost in time, PJ.
Mm,
It felt nice, and I think that's comparing from like this movie was made in 1977, which is the same year as Star Wars. Um,
hmm
um, just in terms of just filmmaking, and you don't realize when you watch those kind of old movies how like there's so much more longer takes and
Yep.
like nowadays everything seems like, oh my god, like just the amount of like I guess it's just the amount of editing, you know what I mean, where like even like I just watched the beginning, was on YouTube, like they had, I guess I don't know, it just came on my front page, the beginning of Raiders of the Lost
hmm
Ark, that whole opening sequence. There's some long takes, even you
Yeah.
see when Indiana Jones just walks from like, you know, from like the jungle just into the entrance of the cave. Today that would be like zip,
Well, it's
it'd be
because no one
like,
has patience anymore.
right. It would just be like zip. So
Yeah.
it felt kind of like nice to kind of walk through the film, um, and everything. And I guess some of the negatives of the film is the acting's very good. Some of the things that can be a bit jarring is the two main characters, like Keith Carradine. They don't really speak with a French accent.
Okay.
And Harvey Keitel just sounds like he's from Brooklyn.
Right.
It's not really. So it could be. I mean, I think it makes you hate him more by him having that accent, but it does kind of somewhat seem a little bit jarring. But it's not going to make or break the film
That's
here.
like when they do World War II movies and all the Germans have British accents, and you're like, we couldn't have just
Yes.
given this guy a German accent.
Right. So, exactly. And I think what else I like about it is it sounds cheesy, but I like that it's almost like I saw some like reviews online, like, oh, like between the duels, this kind of seems like filler, and I think that's not really fair because nowadays there's so much exposition. Where this movie and looking at it now, actually, Ridley Scott's catalog is not everything has to be told to you. I know like movies is supposed to be showing you and not telling you, but nowadays there's so much like telling, like hey, 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 where this is like, oh, there's some subtle stuff like, oh, like there's like I guess the over, I guess I'll say subplot is like this basically it's like the end of Napoleon's reign. So you're seeing that change, and where Harvey Keitel is like like a hardcore, diehard fan of him, and where Keith Carradine's like, I'm kind of just a soldier. I'm just following the next guy's in charge, and you kind of just see how their relationship politically is, and it's not like I said, it's kind of subtle in the film, but nowadays that would be like so
Right.
amplified, it would almost probably take over the storyline between the personal duel between these two. So, but I kind of like that. I didn't really feel like it was Phil. I think it was like kind of like, oh, and just my last thing in with this is like I like movies that are just kind of filmed sometimes just on regular film, like actual film
Yep.
stock. I like digital. It depends on the film. I think it works more the
It
better
looks
with others.
different when it's on film. You could
Yeah,
tell.
it feels, and I kind of like the acting. What I mean by that is like they call like today's actors very much more natural.
hmm
Where like if you look movies from like the maybe the 40s, 30s, where it's like translated, like, hey kids,
hmm
no, now you're all saying let's sort of like put on, and they're not really doing that, but part of it I kind of reminds me of a play. Maybe I'll say that this movie kind of feels like you're watching a play. I'll say that, and yeah, all I can say, folks, I would definitely, you know what, if you're into Ridley Scott films, like I said, you can see sprinkles of this, how this is his first film, but you could see where obviously he came out with Napoleon. You could see where how he did, um, like Blade Runner. You could see these little things that movies like Legend and he actually came out with another movie a few years ago called The Last Duel that had Ben Stiller in it, Adam Driver in it. So
But not connected to this in any way.
no,
Yeah.
clearly, really Scott has a thing for this kind of time period and
Mhm.
duels and swords. So, but yeah, I would recommend it. I mean, out of 10, I maybe give it like a 7.5. Maybe an 8. It's
Okay.
that's a generous 8. But I think if you watch it, you're like, what, that was cool. And it's the ending makes it cool. You go like, all right, it was worth the ride. And I wouldn't really make this for like a date movie to sit down with your significant other. But this is a movie you got to watch by yourself. You want to watch something pretty cool, and you have appreciation for film, you would definitely like it. So I wouldn't really recommend for people who are looking for fast action, or this is not Gladiator. This is not that kind of movie. Like I said, this is really more a slow pace. Like this is in the 70s was considered an action film. So that's what
Right.
it is. So it's a lot of drama, suspense, and like I said, I think what kept me like didn't get me bored was I'm like, okay, I want to see how this ends. And like Harvey Keitel, I think everyone has like a villain in their own lives where you're like every time, whether it's maybe it's a coworker or a boss or a bully in school, and like you can graduate high school, maybe like 15, 20 years later, you see them at a bar, you're like, oh, doesn't mean you're gonna fight them, but there's that sense of just like, oh, you're still here. Oh, like so that's so if you can relate to that, I think you would enjoy the film. So, The Duelists, folks.
And Ridley Scott, he's not a young gentleman.
No,
He's got to
he
be pushing 90, right?
yeah, he's definitely yeah. I looked it up. His birthday was in 1937, so this guy's definitely in his 80s. So
Yeah,
yeah, and
he's
he's coming
close to.
out. Yeah,
And that's what I was gonna say. He's coming out with another movie. Not only is he look, I'm not necessarily sure I'm too hyped on the idea of Gladiator 2
yeah,
either.
yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, it's a big picture. It's a big movie. It's a lot to do. And at almost 90 years old, to tackle a project
Yeah,
that that scale.
yeah,
If I was
exactly.
the movie studio, and I don't know which studio Gladiator comes out from, I don't know if
I think it's Universal.
is it
Mhm,
Universal? I
mhm.
would be like, I don't know if I can invest the money in this picture. It's a long shoot, it's a heavy shoot, and this guy could be done tomorrow. Like we could wake up in a world tomorrow and they're like, Ridley Scott didn't make it, and it
Right,
wouldn't shock anybody at 90 years old. And you're
right.
gonna give this guy a bajillion-dollar budget movie? That is like, and it's because of obviously the
Yeah.
library and the that
Yes.
you, that builds up to this, but and that you give him that sort of trust because you know he's going to make a high quality movie and you know people are going to go and see it. But my God, the trust the studio put into an almost 90-year-old man
Yes.
is really incredible because what a risk. What a risk. What would have
Yeah.
happened if at 85 years old in the middle of this movie
Yeah.
he wouldn't have made it? Like, what
He
do
did-
they do? What do they do? They're just like,
yeah.
well, there goes that money.
Yeah. He didn't last the duel of life. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that's an incredible sort
Yes.
of thing to happen that they would give because you don't see a lot of 90-year-old filmmakers making epics these days.
Absolutely not. Maybe the closest one is maybe Scorsese. You know, with his
Yeah,
4 hour films. That's about it.
yeah.
You know, he's in his 80s as well. So crazy. Hmm.
But anyway, I just thought that was like
Absolutely, I
a
agree, man.
phenomenal thing to when I realized how old he. I didn't realize he was that old
Yeah, I know.
until very
Wild.
recently, only because that movie was coming out, Gladiator 2, and I'm like, let me look into this, and that's when I realized, and I'm like, wow, that is just blew my mind. Just blew my
I
mind that
yeah, I'm right with you, man.
yeah. Anyway,
So PJ, what is your old movie new review? What's your
so
choice?
So let me say this. This was not the original movie I was going to review tonight. And it is
Wow.
a movie we've spoken about, but never reviewed.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and I want to tell you the backstory before I tell you the movie.
Sure.
That's why I changed my pick. So the other night, me, you, and Uncle Rob and our friend Simon, all who have been
Yeah.
on this episode before, have undertaken a bit of a project. And I don't know if we want to say what it is or not
Yeah.
yet, but that's neither here nor there. But we took on a bit of a project. And we're still working through it. But taking on that project brought me back into a headspace where I was many years ago when I was trying to do the film school thing and trying to do the whole film thing, right?
Sure.
And it like awakened that piece of me a little bit when we were working on it. And it put me in the mood to watch the movie that made me want to do these sort of things. And like I said, so obviously the movie is Clerks.
Yeah, I was about to say, yep.
Obviously that
Mhm.
movie, and we've spoken about how it's my favorite movie and all this other stuff, but we've never actually reviewed it.
Correct.
And so I thought maybe I would review it today. And it's all because we were working the other day and we had the camera going and all this other stuff, and
Yeah.
it really for me having wanting to do things like that my entire life really just put me back in the headspace from when I first saw the movie and made me want to watch it again.
Yeah.
So
I
that
understand.
is why I picked the movie Clerks to review, and I think you've seen it, right?
I have seen it, and I it's been years, man.
Okay.
Definitely over maybe 20 years. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I watch it not every day or anything like that, but I watch it at least once a year. There are
Mhm.
some movies that are on my rotation that I will watch every year, and this is one of them. I've actually watched it multiple times this year just because I had already watched it, and this made me
Mhm.
want to watch it again. Anyway, that is why I chose Clerks to review. So Clerks is a black and white picture. Let me tell you the year it came out.
I was just going to ask you, what year that come out?
Yeah, let me just pull up the data. I wrote it down. Clerks came out in 1994. Actually,
Wow.
almost exactly 30 years ago. 'Cause it came out October 19th, 1994.
Huh.
So yeah, it's which really makes you feel old when you realize that these
Right.
movies that we grew up on are like,
Right. And just like 1994, we talked about this multiple times. 94, man, what a magical year for films. Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction,
yep.
Shawshank Redemption, and in Clerks. I know it
And
didn't win
Clerks,
like nominated, but still, that's another significant film.
Clerks
You know,
won at Sundance, or it was
there you
picked. I don't know if it won or if it picked up. It was picked up at
exactly. That's why
Sundance.
exactly, man.
Yeah,
What a
and
murderer's row of
arguably, I mean,
movies, man.
obviously, Quentin Tarantino is a much bigger success story for independent film for sure. But there is an argument that Clerks is the movie that started that mid '90s, that 1990s
Yeah, I'm sure.
independent film
Yeah, it's probably the 1-2
revolution.
punch. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I
Quentin
think those
opened
two
the door, and
guys.
then
Yeah,
he, because even you have what's his name, Robert Rodriguez.
yep,
Desperado, all those
yeah.
cats.
So the '90s is obviously the best time in the world for films. For me, probably
Hmm.
for you,
Yeah, of
and
course.
probably for most of our listeners. Um, so a 1994 movie. Before I get into the review of the movie, I also wanted to put this out there. This felt kind of relatable to us because we were working on our project and we're working on our project on a budget when it comes to whether it's our podcast, whether it's
Oh,
outside thing.
yeah.
They made that movie for $27,000.
Wow.
That was he. So Kevin Smith, the director of that movie, had to sell his comic book collection. He had
Yep.
to, you know, take out so many credit cards, all these things, just to get enough money to film the movie. So again, things that I find very relatable, especially even more now than I did prior. So the plot of the movie is Dante Hicks, the Brian
Hmm.
O'Halloran, who I've met, tremendously nice person, by the way. Um, he plays Dante Hicks, who works at a convenience store.
Hmm.
If you haven't seen the movie, we're talking. You don't see convenience stores like this anymore. I mean, because now you think convenience store, people think vape shop, but it's really like it's not even a
Yeah.
7-Eleven. You can get a coffee, you can get cigarettes, you can get some snacks, and there's like some like milk in a freezer in the back, like a
Yeah.
small convenience store. You could buy a lottery ticket there. Like that's it.
Yeah.
Um, and he gets called in on his day off from work because the person who's supposed to work called out, whatever, and he's not going to be there. So that is our hero of the film is Dante Hicks, portrayed by Brian O'Halloran. So he arrives to the quick stop, tries to get in. Somebody puts gum in the locks. He can't get in. Um, the reason for that in the real world is because they had to film the movie at night when the store was closed, and they needed an excuse to not have the shutters open when they were
Right.
filming because you couldn't have it daytime. So
Right. Hmm.
that was the reason for that. Movie magic, movie ideas to get through some obstacles. And then we are introduced to the other, I guess we'll call him protagonist of the movie, although in
Yeah.
a lot of ways he's the antagonist of the movie.
Yeah.
Randall Graves, portrayed by Jeff Anderson, who works at the video rental store RST Video right next door.
Right. Right.
Uh, so that's the setup, right? Those are your main characters, and then of course the other two main characters are Jay and Silent Bob, who sell drugs in front of the store.
Yep.
They're basically they sell weed. That's what they
Right.
are.
Right.
Um, so that's your setup for the movie. The thing about this movie, when you think about the plot of a movie, like we just went through your movie,
Yep.
and there's a lot of plot to it. There's a
Hmm.
lot.
Yeah.
There's really not a lot of plot to Clerks. The idea of that movie is that it's two guys hanging out at work, just bullshitting about the things they like to do,
Yeah.
which is watch movies. Which again, we do it every week, right? That's what we do is we talk about movies. And that's why that movie resonated me with so much with me in the beginning is I'm like, these guys are doing the things I like to do.
Yep.
And they talk about Star Wars, they talk about, all those sort of pop culture references that were big in the 90s. Uh, and then interspersed throughout this movie are the customers, which is where most of the jokes or a lot of the jokes
Yeah.
come from.
Hmm.
One guy gets his hand caught, gets stuck in a Pringles thing, and they have to help him get the Pringles can off his hand. Or, people come in there and they want to buy dirty magazines, or They
Mhm.
ask questions. How much is this? When there's a big sign right next to it.
Yep.
And now that I'm essentially a registered jockey at the at this comic book store every day,
Right. Right.
I
Right.
see those same questions come in and out of the store every day. How much is this? I don't know, man. Why don't you look at the price that's clearly right in front of your face? Like,
Right.
these
Right.
are things that like they feel like when you watch them, you laugh because it's just so relatable, and the dialogue in this movie is just so relatable. And then there's a scene where they were supposed to play hockey, but they can't play hockey because Dante gets called into work. They come up with this plan to play hockey on the roof of the quick stop.
Right.
And again, the plot, it's not a lot of plot to really go over because it is just dialogue and jokes.
Right.
That's really it.
Mhm.
The big arc of the story is really Dante and his girlfriend.
Mhm.
He's dating someone whose name is Veronica, who is, from all accounts, a supportive girlfriend in the movie. She makes him lunch. She does all these things for him,
Mhm.
but he's still hung up on his ex girlfriend, who is comes back into the picture during this film. Takes place over one day,
Right.
and wants to get back together with him. He wants to get back together with her. That's really like if you're looking for the plot, that the string that connects everything. That's what it is. It's that romance story of Dante having to decide between these two girls. Um, it's, to me, one of the best films made in the 1990s. Not just because I relate to it or anything
Right. Right.
like
Right.
that. I don't know if there is a movie that captures the feeling
Of the '90s.
of the 90s more than Clerks.
Yeah.
Because you watch like Pulp Fiction, and that's
Right.
not like that's so exact. It's great. One of my
Right.
favorites of all time. One of your favorites of all
Mhm.
time. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily
Yeah. I
realistic
don't.
in any stretch.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. I don't really feel that's like a
Right.
like. It's a. It's made in the '90s, but that doesn't represent the '90s.
Exactly. Exactly. And with like, and Clueless, I think, is another good 90s
Oh
film
yeah.
that
Oh.
really
Oh. Oh. I
captures the
love that movie.
90s a lot too,
Yes.
but in a
Absolutely.
much different way. Like that's,
Hmm.
a much different feel of a movie. Does a great job of capturing the film.
Oh yeah. No
I
question.
think those two movies to me could be bookends for how the 90s, or the mid 90s anyway,
Yep. I agree.
feels to people. Um, the soundtrack for Clerks is much better than people probably remember. That's why I
I
wanted.
can't remember.
Yeah, let me see if I could pull up some of the songs that are in it. You have, let's see, hold on. Soul Asylum is on
Oh
the
yeah.
soundtrack.
That's right.
Alice in Chains is on there. Love Among Freaks, Bad Religion. These are the bands
Yep.
that are on the soundtrack of
Yep.
Clerks. And again, you look at the soundtrack that was selected, and it's that 90s
Yep.
rock
Hmm.
feel. I mean,
Yep.
everything about this movie um, is rooted in its time, but it feels so authentic.
Yeah.
So some of the other bits in the movie, a customer goes into the movie, he goes to the bathroom, asks if he can use the bathroom. He asks to bring a magazine in the back. He asks for the dirty magazine. He dies in the bathroom because he jerks off too much in the bathroom
Yeah.
and dies. Right? Like these are the kind of jokes
All right.
that are in there. Um, but I I think people always get hung up on it being funny, and they don't see the impact it had on culture, especially during that time, especially looking back now. Um, there's that thing that they do. The Library of Congress picks movies,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't know if you know this. Clerks was entered into the Library of Congress
When recently or?
maybe a year or two ago.
Oh wow. Yeah. That,
Yeah.
that I agree with that. I think, like you said, I think one, like you said, that movie great when you said about like it captures like the feel of the '90s. I think another thing with that movie really excels at, there's just like, I think they say sometimes oh my god, Martin Scorsese films have this where there's no plot but all story, and that's a good. Sometimes that
Yeah.
works.
Yep.
Like if you think about what's really the plot of like Goodfellas, it's really
Yeah.
just watching a story. That's why
Yep.
Scorsese always says his movie that won an Oscar was the one that only had his only film that had, it's his only film he ever made that had a plot. It was
Yeah.
The Departed. But anyway, I think I think it goes to show how like story and like destiny really plays a part. And it's crazy, PJ. I think it's maybe this is why you and I were destined to do this podcast, because we both picked our filmmakers' debut films, right?
Yep. We did.
And
That's true.
and in doing my research, I brought the same thing with Ridley Scott. He kind of made his own luck where he was think he was making commercials and maybe TV shows. He wanted to make a movie, but he couldn't. Like, no one wanted to put the money up, or no one could get a script. So he basically bought the
Yeah.
rights to the short story.
Hmm.
And anyway, long story short, he bought the short story, and then he hired a dude to make it into a screenplay. So he kind of made his own luck too. And
Yeah.
sometimes, folks, like as we're saying, you got to make your own luck in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And again, just the podcast that we do every week, or like I said, that little project we're working on separately. It's the same. We're doing it, right? That's what we're
Yeah,
doing. We're
yeah,
putting ourselves out there and making content and doing the things we want to do, and we're doing it our own way. And that's why some of these films that Clerks, Duelists, like you said, they resonate, I think, with us because of not just what's on the
yes,
screen, but
yeah.
what happens off
Behind,
screen,
yes,
behind the
behind the
scenes.
camera, yes.
I think I'm drawn to movies and filmmakers that have a story behind the story more
Yeah.
than just someone that puts something on a screen.
Hmm.
That's just how I feel like when I watch things now. It's not. Oh yeah, it could be a great movie, it could be a great cast, and it could be fun to watch. But sometimes I'm drawn more to what made that movie happen in the first place.
Hmm.
That for me is a big thing, and I think with Clerks specifically, so much had to happen behind the scenes just for that movie to take off, and it spawned so many sequels, so many other projects,
Yeah.
production companies,
Hmm.
comic books. You take one movie and it becomes
Yeah, and you
a
and you
thing.
probably wouldn't get movies like, look, I don't know exactly the order of these films that came out, but like a movie like SLC Punk,
Hmm.
you probably wouldn't get like you know, oh man, like all those other
I
kind of
mean, you
like
probably
teeny
wouldn't get
movies.
any of the what's that?
Or like,
I
this. I call it like. I mean, Clueless probably helped with this too. But you said that was a great point. I think this Clerks and Clueless, you probably wouldn't get like the Ken Hardly Waits, those kind of like, because obviously Clerks can be very very dirty. You know what I mean? Like a lot of some
right.
crude
Yeah,
profanity and that kind of stuff. So it definitely paved the way for a different,
but
where
I
someone
think
said
you
that, hey, that
also
can
don't
be.
get those movies, the Judd Apatow movies.
Yes.
I
Oh,
don't think
great
you can
point.
get to a Judd
Yep.
Apatow movie
Yeah.
without first having a Kevin Smith movie.
Yeah. Hmm. No, that's a great point. Hmm.
It and whether or not Kevin Smith gets the credit for that, whether or not he even cares if he gets the credit for that, who knows? But I think it's worth noting that a
Oh yeah.
cultural phenomenon was born out of
Yeah.
this. I mean, out of just this guy creating Jay and Silent Bob. I mean, that's
Yeah. Oh yeah.
that
Yeah. If you, that's a great
it's
point, because
yeah,
without Jay and Silent Bob, you probably wouldn't have the Seth Rogen and the canceled
yeah,
James, what's his name? James Frank, was it
James
James Frank?
Franco, yeah,
Right. Yeah. Right. Hmm. You probably wouldn't have those two in there, Pineapple Express and the
yeah.
other um adventures they would go on. You probably wouldn't even have like well, I guess you say Cheech and Chong also inspired
For
a lot,
sure.
but even like a Harold and Kumar, they had their
Yeah,
own series. I mean, a lot of things. Hey, it's but definitely no. I agree. Clerks definitely um influenced. Was definitely, hey, it's influential, man. And
and just pros and cons, like we always do on a review,
yep,
pros and
yep,
cons. I think we've covered the pros. It's hysterical. The jokes are funny.
hmm,
The
yeah,
the acting, you don't feel like they're acting. You really just feel like these are two guys shooting the shit.
hmm,
And I think that makes it flow so good, and just feel again the authenticity of that movie is its biggest pro.
right,
The cons, I mean, look, it's not the most beautifully shot film.
mm-hmm,
Take the black and white out of it; it's all basically a steady shot.
yeah, hmm,
That's all it is from scene to scene. There's no big
yeah,
effects in there. The
right,
If you watch it now, I think if you're our age or older, you remember that time period. It
hmm,
it plays well, but I don't know that like a teenager today puts on Clerks. I don't know if it has that timeless feel to it that a lot of movies will have. I think it is dated in as much as you need to be from that era to appreciate this movie.
right,
And whether or not that's a con, I mean,
yeah, yeah. I know
you
what you're
know,
saying.
where
Hmm.
where look, our people our age are keeping this guy in
Right,
business, right?
right,
It's not new people.
hmm,
I don't know that like if my niece or nephew decided to watch this movie and they're in their 20s,
right.
I don't know that it has any impact on them other than like, oh look, that one guy is fat and has a beard. It looks like my uncle. I don't know if it has any impact more
Right.
than that. But the cons like that, the film, the cinematography of it isn't really there. But just as a piece of culture, I think just a phenomenal movie.
Absolutely. And I think just doing a quick like another just comparison between the two is like both these films actually have a very small cast. You know,
Hmm.
the Duelist has a small cast. You know, I mean, you heard. I mean, there's a lot of big, there's big scenes and all this other, but the cast is small, ain't huge. So I think there's also some merit. So obviously, like you said, smaller budget, smaller scale, but there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good in that, and I feel like these two movies we're discussing today, I feel like which one we're gonna get into is do these films they need sequels or reboots or some kind of inspiration for
Right.
other things. But I wish studios today would almost take a page from these what we just talked about today, like kind of go small scale, and you might get something big out of it.
Hmm.
And I know they want to make franchises, but um, I don't know. Like I said, we're going to discuss it shortly. Um, be a nice wrap up, PJ. So, folks, PJ and I are going to discuss two of these films we just talked about now that need a sequel, and PJ's gotten a couple of his. The Clerks have had three sequel, right? Three,
There are three
three.
Clerks, and
Mm-hmm,
arguably every movie that
mm-hmm,
Kevin Smith has made is a sequel to Clerks.
mm-hmm,
They're all set in the same universe. They all have characters that show up in
mm-hmm.
outside of Jay and Silent Bob. Multiple characters show up in multiple movies. So you could really say it's got like what Mallrats Chasing Amy, Jay and Silent Bob
Right.
Strike Back,
Mm-hmm,
Dogma, Clerks
right.
2, Clerks 3, Jay and Silent Bob. You could say this movie has like 7 or 8 sequels, really.
Right. I'm curious, PJ. Do you think Kevin Smith would ever do? Now, hear me out. Like because he's had a television show, like in terms of
Hmm.
like a animated one. But do you think he ever do like, I guess like reboot, new actors, and it's a and like a sitcom, like what's that show? Everyone I never seen this like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia kind
Right,
of
right.
thing, or The Office. I'm saying that's a style of show, but
Hmm.
you think you ever make a television series where or like a Seinfeld, where show up.
He,
This can kind of follow the same the show about nothing, where
yeah,
it's not some
I think he
overarching thing.
would. He's
You know?
tried in the past.
Oh,
His
okay.
original plan for Mallrats was to do a Mallrats sequel that would be a TV show.
Oh, okay.
But that kind of fell through for a number of different reasons. But I've seen him speak a number of times, and
Hmm.
he's not. I don't think he would be opposed to a TV show if the right opportunity presented itself.
All right.
I mean, he did Comic Book Men, which was a reality TV show, but
Yeah,
he's been involved in TV shows
because I
before.
think he could. I think he could write, like you said, which is a great point. Like doing more of like have it take place nowadays,
Hmm.
like people working at a store, and I think he could actually even have more fun with that. And you have one guy who and his best friend works from home doing Zoom, and you can
Right.
really expand on that. But okay, okay. For my film, for I guess it's crazy because Ridley Scott's brother, he's passed away. He did Top Gun, so they made a sequel to Top Gun, Top Gun 2. Obviously, I don't think The Duelist needs a sequel or anything, but if someone were to
Hold
throw a bunch of
hold on. You
money at,
said Ridley Scott's brother directed Top Gun?
yeah, Tony Scott, yep,
I had no idea that that was
yeah,
his brother.
yeah, Tony Scott also directed
Huh.
True Romance, yep. Hmm.
I did not realize
Yep,
that.
which is a movie I recommend, and I recommend another movie by Tony Scott. It's called Unstoppable with Denzel Washington and Chris Pine. Yep, it's a really good movie about it, like a runaway train. Um,
Huh,
so
that is
mhm,
unbelievable.
yep.
That I mean, it shouldn't be shocking because there's been a lot of directors where we've seen in the family they
Oh
make
yeah,
big movies, but I just had no idea. That's crazy.
yeah. I think the only thing if you know, I could see this. If they wanted to, make money out of this, milk the milk money out of this movie, The Duelist, is actually they do a limited series like The Queen's Gambit, which I really recommend. That's a great series, The Queen's Gambit, and you do like a six or eight episode of these two guys and historical piece. I think it could work. You know, get the right actors, and I think it'd be cool.
Can you see them taking this idea? This is what I would see as a not
Hmm.
so much as a sequel, although you could frame it as
Right.
that, but more of a reboot or a remake, but not set it in these periods, but make it a more technologically
Yeah. Oh yeah.
futuristic setting.
You could definitely do that. Yeah, I can see them doing that for sure. For sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. You can get like I feel like a Judge Dredd like
Right. Yep.
esque type of feel. Yeah. No. No question. Yeah. I think because like I said, as we discussed in many things, sometimes these things are based on books and stories, and there's
Hmm.
always when you have that as your source material, you tend to get a lot of mileage out of it, folks.
Yep.
So, but yeah, my last thing I just want to I guess I'm advocating for Hollywood because this past summer I went to California, I did a studio tour at Universal, and the gentleman said, back in the day, like this is like the 30s, 40s, 50s, Universal, their whole studio was making horror films. So that's like all the Universal
Hmm.
monsters, Frankenstein, Mummy, Creature from the Black Lagoon, MGM. They made all the musicals. That's like your,
Yep.
Sing in the Rain, and then Warner Brothers did all the film noir. That's like your detective films, like your Maltese Falcon. So part of me's like, hey, studios, maybe you kind of bring that back, And I know they try to do the dark universe, with the horror films, but I don't know. I feel like, I think we're kind of desperate for. Look, we love comic book movies, we love action films, but this would be like refreshing to kind of see in the big. I know, hey, money talks. We know that, folks, but it would be kind of cool to see. Uh,
Well, at the
these
end of
kind
the
of.
day, it's storytelling, and you don't as much. I look, I'm a comic book guy, right? I love comic books, and I think there are storytelling in reading comics. There's not as much storytelling in a comic book movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just doesn't have this. It's
Right.
not original. It's not an
Right.
original
Mm-hmm.
story. Even if they don't follow the books directly, it's derivative
Yeah.
of something that already exists, and it doesn't mean it's bad. But it would be nice to see more original storytelling, different genres of movie make a comeback. That would be nice to see.
Yeah.
Otherwise, everything feels a little bit stale. Like, I mean, are we
Yeah.
really?
Hmm.
Gladiator 2 is a good example. Are we really? Do we need it? Do we need more Gladiator?
and I think maybe we'll end on this note, PJ. I think that from today's films and compared to these two films we talked about now, after I was done watching The Duelist, I kept thinking about the movie. I kept like analyzing it. I'm not
Mhm.
like doing like what we do with like Deadpool and Wolverine, where we're like reviewing it in a different kind of
Right.
way. If not for the podcast, I'm just talking in general. You know what I mean? Like, oh, they fucked up the storyline or whatever. It's not whatever it is. I feel
Right.
like with these movies and with Clerks, like you walk away going like, huh, like,
Makes you
oh man.
think.
You're like, oh, that movie was kind of cool. I like how he ended that movie. Like for the duels, like, oh, that was a twist ending. Or for Clerks, like, huh, what a wacky, thing I experienced, man. Like, what, like it gives you so much curiosity, And I feel like we're, like you said, you just kind of it's like you just eat a meal at Applebee's. Oh, that was good, and then you kind of somewhat forget about it. Like
Hmm.
I forgot Deadpool. Really, I forgot that movie. Deadpool Wolverine. Anyway, I, I forgot I almost saw it the other day. I was like, oh my god, it seems so long ago. It's like,
Yeah.
just you know, kind of like, and just they just announced too is like was the next Spider-Man with what's his name? Andrew, what's that guy's
Oh,
name?
Tom
Tom
Holland.
Holland. Like I forgot the other one came out. The far from whatever, I don't, whatever it's called. Home
Yeah,
from
the one where
home,
there's all three of them are in it,
home,
right?
yeah, home sweet
Yeah.
home. you know, like I mean, I completely forgot about that. Where like I'm still thinking about this movie. No joke. Since I saw, it, I think about like the twist ending for real. Like, oh man, like it's still like some great lines in there too, man. Oh, some good lines. Kind of like Gladiator. Like my name is Decimus Medius Maratus. Like has those
I
kind of.
think that's something that doesn't happen much anymore, where there's like lines from a movie that become just part of the lexicon. Like
Yes.
Seinfeld, if you think about Seinfeld, like yada 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 and all that stuff
Oh yeah.
becomes just part of what people say. And I don't think that really
yeah. Yeah.
happens anymore. And
You're
that's
right. I can't think of a movie that's really had a line like that. That is yeah, the movies I'm thinking are like early 2000s, but I'm talking about, I'm trying to recall the past couple of years. Ugh, yeah, I
yeah.
can't think, you know.
There's really nothing where it's like the writing is so good that it just becomes a thing people say in
Hmm.
real life. It doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, I'm thinking of like the Austin Powers. I'm thinking about the even like You just said it before, like the Hangover, right? Right, he did that movie. Right? No, I don't think he did. Judd Apatow did that.
No, Judd Apatow didn't do the
Oh,
Hangover.
Todd
That was
Phillips.
Todd
Todd
Phillips.
Phillips. You know, just
And
like
then he made
Mr.
the Joker, so he could
Right,
just go
right,
take a shit
right.
somewhere.
Joker too.
Yeah.
But like, just Mr. Chow, like so long, like, all that. Um, yeah, that's a great, like you said, not so much quotable films anymore. But yeah, folks, a new ongoing series, old movies, new reviews, and we're gonna revisit it in the future. It's not gonna be like a monthly thing. It's
Right.
basically when hey, PJ might be like, hey, Mike, I got a movie. I'm like, hey, PJ, I got a movie,
Yeah.
and then it comes
Yeah.
up. So
And we don't have to do just movies. Could do some TV shows. We could, if we
sure.
rewatch an old series or whatever,
Yep.
just things that aren't necessarily new in the world, but it could just be new to us.
Yes, exactly.
New to us.
Correct the mundo.
We haven't seen every movie ever, so it's not, it's
Yeah,
not as if we can't just go and find ourselves watching another movie from the 60s or 70s that we've never seen and want to talk about it.
exactly. So yeah, folks, I think it's safe to say PJ and I both recommend these films.
Absolutely.
Especially if you're a film lover. And yeah, same time, same table.
Snoochie boochies.
Boys and girls, lunchtime is over. For more information, visit their website at coolkidslunchtable.podbean.com. Follow the boys on all social media platforms. Just search Cool Kids Lunch Table Podcast. Now get to class before you get detention.